All right, we gotta get the Facebook groups in here. Gotta let it breathe, as the boss man always likes to say. Hopefully, we get a couple green check marks. I know we had some issues with them last week, at least before I started having internet issues. All right, there we go. Welcome into another episode of Broncos for Breakfast. Joining me today is Dylan Von Arxes. Nick is currently busy driving after the holidays as he's heading back home. Before we get into the conversation and talking about the Broncos, Dylan, I gotta ask, how was your holiday, man?
Yeah, it was fantastic. For about a month here, I was dealing with some vertigo after rupturing an eardrum, which is fun, but I've been doing good this past week and thankfully just in time for the holidays. So spending time with family, eating more sugar than I care to admit, and yeah, just hanging out.
Yeah, don't want to talk about the whole eating thing. Let's just say my diet has definitely taken a back seat over the last couple weeks, going back to Thanksgiving, but hasn't been too bad actually. Stepped on the scale this morning before going live, and my weight's not that much worse than it was, but it was a good holiday here. Had friends over and had family over, and we're gonna have more family over tomorrow as my in-laws come down. But yeah, it was a good holiday, and we still have another holiday coming up. I hope everybody in the chat had a wonderful holiday, and hope everybody stayed safe, didn't drink and drive, of course. Checked in on friends and family who you may not talk to all that much, and see how they were going, and just had a wonderful day. And of course, the ending of the day was great. The Broncos went into Arrowhead and they beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Though it wasn't the prettiest game, well, they won, and that's what mattered. They kept themselves alive for the top seed in the AFC. And more importantly, even though they didn't win it that night, found out a couple days later, yes, Saturday, they won the division thanks to the Houston Texans beating the Los Angeles Chargers. The Denver Broncos are the AFC West champions for the 2015 or 2025 season, which they haven't done since 2015. So it is a testament to what the Broncos have done this year, the way that they pulled off games. Hasn't been the prettiest, but they've gotten the job done. But to get the top seed, they have one more going in. Before we get into it too much, I want to talk a little bit about this Chiefs game. I haven't had a chance to since I've had internet issues since last Wednesday. Finally got that resolved on late Friday night. But before we get to that, of course, we got to say hello to some people in the chat. We have David Youngkin saying, nice to be division champions, but the job is not done yet. This is John Payton's message. Job's not done yet. Vance Joseph has to have the best coaching of his career against the Chargers. I have the Broncos winning. We have Michael Ronquillo saying, good morning, Eric and Dylan on Broncos for breakfast. Go Bo Broncos. And the Broncos will have to wait until the morning NFL game on Sunday because the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans play in the morning. Yeah, they won't be able to know for sure, won't be able to go into the game knowing if they have the top seed or not because the New England Patriots also start their game at the same time. But doesn't matter. As long as the Broncos win, the top seed is theirs. We have Denver Luke saying, good morning. Good morning to you, Denver Luke. Good morning to you, Michael and David Youngkin, and Gatorade Gaming saying, good morning, Eric and Dylan. What's good, Broncos country? Dylan, as we look back on this, on the Chiefs game, do you have any thoughts about it?
Yeah, just some basic stuff. Obviously, we knew receiver was going to be a kind of a problem this year. I know a lot more people were optimistic about it. Obviously, you get Pat Bryant. Everyone had high hopes for Troy Franklin, who has taken a step forward, but in my mind is still a wide receiver 3 or 4 at best. And you're really starting to see it with Cortland Sutton, which is not something you want to see right before the playoffs. I mean, I believe it was 3 drop passes in the Chiefs game, 1 for a touchdown, obviously jarred loose, but you would like to see your top guy come down with that ball and keep a touchdown on the board. And flipping to the other side of the ball real quick as well. It was a dominant defensive effort in terms of the Chiefs only scored 13 points, but man, were there sacks left on the table. I mean, Jonathan Cooper in particular has been pretty quiet since the bye. I think he has what, a half sack, a full sack. I'm not entirely sure, but he's kind of fallen off, as is most of the defense, except Tron Franklin Myers has been getting pressure quite a bit recently. Pay that man, George Payton. But other than that, another ugly game. I mean, what can we say? That's kind of the Broncos special at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it's been, but the pass rush, they've gotten a good amount of pressures, but it hasn't been consistent. It's been a lot of one player games since the mini bye week, even. John Franklin Myers has been great, but he only played 11 snaps against the Chiefs because he's been dealing with an injury that popped up in the Jaguars game, and they decided not to risk it too much more against the Chiefs. Played 11 snaps and then was pulled for the game. But I mean, Nick Benito, he had some great pressures there. He had 4 pressures on the game, but man, he's got to find a way to win a little bit more consistency. He even took some ownership and accountability after it. He's like, I didn't play my best. I got to get home. I got to find a way to get to sack the quarterback. But Jonathan Cooper, when looking at the defensive pass rush and the defensive front, Jonathan Cooper has probably been the most frustrating player since the mini bye week because when you go back and you look, against the Commanders, how many times did Marcus Mariota, was able to sneak through because Jonathan Cooper lacked that pass rush lane discipline and got too far upfield, leaving that opening, and Marcus Mariota went and used his legs. And then we saw the same thing a couple times against the Raiders in the second game with Geno Smith, then Jordan Love, then Trevor Lawrence, and even the Chiefs quarterback whose name escapes me at the moment. It's just been a consistent issue with him, and it's carrying over into the run game too. There's a lot of run game discipline, a lack of run game lane discipline or gap integrity, and Denver's been doing great for it because they've been able to make up for it. But there's going to be a point where he's going to get caught. A team's going to recognize this, and they're going to make him pay, and then make the defense pay for it. He's got to figure out what it is. Like, I hate using the term selfish football with it because I don't think anybody on this team is actually being selfish. But when you lose that integrity, when you lack that discipline, it is essentially selfish football, especially as a pass rusher when you're losing that pass rush lane uh, discipline because you're chasing the sack. It's hard not to actually say that's what it is.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily like you mentioned selfishness, right? Because we've seen how these Broncos players ride for each other, especially the defense. But yeah, it's more of like you kind of lost the plot a little bit, Jonathan. Let's get back to what was working, what got you these sacks, because you saw a similar thing last year after he got paid his contract, kind of fell off. And that's not something you want to see, especially after you just paid a dude. Um, and not to set anything up for, the draft or whatever. This is a very good edge class. I'm not saying we want to move on from him yet, but the option is out there. If this is kind of like a trend that the Broncos are seeing, are like, hey man, we're not too excited about how things have shaken out after the bye, after you got your contract.
Yeah, it's a bit rough with the defense. They got to figure it out. And of course, it's not just the pass rush, it's the coverage unit. There's been so many communication errors over the past few weeks. And I went back and I was watching some of the earlier games, not this last week, but the week before, just to see if it was a common trend. There were a lot more communication errors earlier in the season than we realized. And it is it raises the question if teams just finally started to realize that they're having these communication errors. I don't want to pile up on them too much, but Riley Moss is a big one that's been having those communication errors. We saw it multiple times against the Jaguars. He was often off. I know there was that one big play to Parker Washington where it was on to the left of the field, and a lot of people are blaming PJ Locke, where Jacoby Myers got that got that release. Jaquan McMillan blitzed. Well, Riley Moss, because you have that slot corner blitzing, Riley Moss is supposed to peel off Jacoby Myers, pass him off to the safety, and then take that flat or that hook or that lower zone. And he didn't. Dre Greenlaw is supposed to have that kind of inner zone, and they're kind of supposed to little pinch that zone tight a little bit. And Riley Moss just decided to turn and run with Jacoby Myers, leaving Parker Washington open short. And that's just one of the communication errors that he had. I saw Cody Alexander highlighted this play. Justin Simmons, Caden Stearns, and a bunch of other former defensive backs. I think Chris Harris is another one. Talked about it, how that's on Riley Moss. Riley Moss has to peel off. He has to recognize the slot corner is blitzing. That changes his assignment. PJ Locke has it over the top. Riley Moss has had a lot of issues like that going over the season. He's been able to cover it for most part, just because the pass rush, but communication errors, pass rush isn't getting home. It's just, for lack of a better way to put it, it's almost a comedy of errors. But it's not exactly funny, and it's not so consistent. Denver's defense still managed to get the job done, still only allowed 13 points. Came up big in the final minutes, but it's not great when you allow the Kansas City Chiefs with a fourth and fifth string tackle. That is what I care about more than the third string quarterback. You allowed a team with their fourth and fifth string tackles to hang into the game until literally the final minute of it.
Yeah, and that's super frustrating, especially when you have a guy like Nick Bonito, when you have a guy like Jonathan Cooper, who has been good the past couple seasons. We were talking about Nick Bonito breaking the sack record, or not breaking the sack record, but at least being in the top of the league in terms of sacks this year, and largely been a non-factor. Non-factor is a bit harsh, but you get what I mean. Against the fourth tackle, that's inexcusable. You got one more game until the playoffs. You don't want to limp into the playoffs as a defense giving up 30-plus points a game. The Commanders of all teams figure it out. I know Dan Campbell's a pretty good head coach over there, but man, the defense has just not been doing good, and that's kind of a mark against Vance Joseph. We kind of saw it last year as well. I'm sure teams will be looking at when they go through the head coaching cycle, through the playoffs and what have you. But man, it just the miscommunication, like you mentioned, whether it's in the secondary or, geez, the linebacker play. I know, I like Alex Singleton as a dude. I think he picked up his play there for a little bit, but it's kind of fallen back down. Dre Greenlaw has largely been abysmal this season. Maybe that's a bit too harsh, but he's just out of place. He's missed tackles. The linebacker that's missed the most, and I know I just like Greenlaw tweaked as well, but Sternad is the most missed linebacker for this team, in my opinion. He's played the best this year out of the linebackers.
Yeah, and it's a one thing. There's still a lot to talk about this game. We still got the offense to talk about. After going back and watching the offense, I was really disappointed with it, with what I saw. I'm going to be honest here. I didn't watch the full game that night. Still had family over. We were still doing, Christmas traditions and stuff like that during the game. I had it on, but I wasn't able to watch all of it. I went back and watched it Friday morning, and also, having internet issues made it a little bit more difficult for us to watch the game. Had to use my mobile data and stream it to my phone. And there was times where I was trying to watch the game and it was just big blur. But watched the game the next morning, watched the game Saturday when I had internet, and watching those, I came back away not super happy with the offensive performance. Don't get me wrong, but it was a lot better than what I was able to see the night of the game. And we still have a lot to talk about that. One thing is, when we're looking ahead a little bit, there's some talk about the Chargers resting the starters, but the Chargers are underdogs in this game, and they're at the way that Vegas has it. It's because that Vegas is clearly showing that they believe that they're going to rest their starters. But speaking of underdogs, the NFL playoffs are almost here, and Underdog is the best place to get in on all the action. Are you ready to get off the bench and into the game? Then head over to Underdog. By the way, it's not just football. Whether you're into basketball, hockey, or any sport in between, Underdog is the best place to get in on all the action all season long.
That's right. Playing on Underdog is easy. You just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like rushing yards, receptions, touchdowns, and more. Get your picks right, and you can win up to 5,000 times your cash.
A lot of people have so much fun playing Underdog, and winning money while watching football, that's a touchdown, you guys. Download the Underdog app today and sign up with promo code MHuddle to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's promo code MHuddle. Millions of fans have already won billions making picks on Underdog. Will y'all be next?
Be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
And thank you, Underdog, for the sponsorship. We appreciate that. Been a pretty stable sponsor all season long, so we really do appreciate that. And we have Michael and Kilo coming in and also adding drop passes to clean up for the Broncos if they want to go far in the NFL playoffs. Gatorade Gaming also adding, have we played that receiver we signed a few weeks ago? I believe you're talking about Elijah Moore. We have not. McLaughlin was the best running back against the Chiefs. Yeah, he's starting to come along. I still think he is very much a replacement level. He is still running back 4 or 5 along with Tyler Bidet, and Denver definitely needs to add more to the room. It's why, it's something that Nick and I have talked about a lot on here. I'd love to see Denver go after Tyler Algier, even bring back J.K. Dobbins, and even in a down year in the NFL draft, still draft somebody, round 6, round 7, bring in a guy as an undrafted free agent for more competition for that 4th, 5th spot, and really rely on Harvey being running back to J.K. Dobbins mixed in there, and then Tyler Algier as well.
Yeah, I mean, the running back rotation has been, Tyler Bidet literally comes in on 3rd down and drops a pass. That's kind of been his job. But you do need more variety in that room. I do like RJ Harvey quite a bit. He's not as consistent as a runner. He's kind of the guy you want to sprinkle in a little more. And he's got, 11 touchdowns now, 12? Something crazy like that, right? Leading. But you do need that every down back. You kind of need that hammer, and Tyler Algier is a perfect guy. I'd absolutely love to have him here in Denver. Just someone who can more consistently get yards, kind of beat down a defense, and that's when you insert RJ Harvey to break off an explosive run, like we've seen him do a handful of times here. But the running back room was a little bit of a concern coming into the season, and seemed like we found the answer with JK, and obviously he got hurt, as he kind of often does. So you definitely add to this room, like you mentioned, get a free agent and go through the draft. Even in a down running back class, maybe you just find a niche guy who can maybe grow in this offense.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely, it's something that they got to do more with it. And they got to, at this point in the season, they're not going to like miraculously turn around the running game in time for the playoffs. It just doesn't happen. Typically by about week 8, week 10, in that range, you typically kind of are what you are. Of course, that's not always the case. The Broncos, after that week 10 game, week 11 game, they started to turn it around offensively. So there's still that possibility. It's just unlikely that they finally get a run game going at a consistent level. Obviously, we had flashes of it. We had that one really great game from RJ Harvey running the ball. And since then, he's been better than he was early in the season, but still not reliable enough or consistent enough to really pound the rock with him consistently, leading to Bo Nix having to throw more. And this was one of those games where, you had 14 rushing attempts from RJ Harvey, and he picked up 11 yards more than expected. He he picked up under 13 yards less than expected. It's a consistent issue with him of leaving yards left on the field. I think he's had one game, if at all, this season where he's had more rush yards than expected. It's always been consistently under. And then the success rate has been consistently an issue, though it is getting better over the past few games. He's being a little bit more successful, 50% success rate against the Chiefs. And then you have Julian McLaughlin, who is at over almost 60%. Didn't run as much, but on 7 rushing attempts, he picked up 3 less yards than Harvey did on his 14. So the running game is an issue, and it's something that they got to really figure out to help keep Bo Nix from having to throw the ball 40 plus times consistently, and help them, really keep those long, sustained drives, keep them in those 3rd and short situations. That help them keep those long, sustaining drives and give that defense extra time on the sideline, help wear out the opponent's defense, and then you can, look for those big explosive plays off of it. But we have Coach Chris saying, "Good morning, Broncos country. God bless, and let's get the number 1 seed." Jermaine says, "Ayo, good morning, guys. We have Gatorade Gaming. Penalties and drops have plagued us all year." They have. Both have been an issue. David Duncan adding, "If defenses want to let Bo dink and dunk, then the Broncos can do long drives, and that's how to win games." Yeah, I mean, if defenses want to let Denver do that, that's just what they just need to accept it at this point and just really play into that. And that's kind of what I was getting at with the running game as well. That can help lead to those long, sustained drives, help them win those games. They only had, I want to say, 7 or 8 drives against the Chiefs, and I think 3 of them were like 10 plus minutes. Like that is a good way of keeping things in control for them and taking what the defense is giving, sustaining those drives, and just wearing down opponents.
Exactly. And you don't need to ask Bo Nix to do the world, right? We've seen in the past this season, if he can make 3 to 5 really good plays, the Broncos are going to win the game. Obviously, Bo hasn't been perfect this season, but we've seen a lot of good, especially in the second half of games. And it sucks that it's kind of hamstrung by, again, go back to receivers dropping balls. It's not just Sutton, it's Franklin, even Tim Patrick here and there, and you're not getting much from the tight ends. The running backs need work. Bo can't all do it himself, but man, in those moments that he does, it's pretty special. And we're going to need to see a lot of that going forward through the playoffs, because there's going to be some tough teams. Obviously, the Broncos have an amazing record and they've won these close games, but I mean, to lock up this first seed, I know there's rumors of Chargers sitting and whatnot, but you get last time they had a bye week, they came out and almost lost to the Commanders. It was a very close game. I want to see some adjustments. We got, especially on defense, man. I mean, you can't have this fall off going into the playoffs. I don't care how many sacks they had before. What have you done for me lately? And that's not a lot. Giving up 30 plus points a game. And the only time you didn't was to a third string quarterback who made his first start on Christmas on a short week. So we can't. They just simply have to play better. They have the talent. VJ, you need to rally your guys. Sean Payton, get after VJ. We've seen that happen a couple times on the sideline the past couple of years. And because something needs to change. You can't, I mentioned at the top of the show, this defense cannot go limping into the playoffs when you have teams like Jacksonville there, even the Patriots to an extent. Just anyone. And that I had a conversation with my friend the other day because he's a Patriots fan. Bleh. But he was joking like, oh, we're the best team and all that stuff. And I said, I don't really think there's truly a best team in the AFC this year. I think it's truly any given Sunday, but the Broncos need to be on their A game for sure, especially defensively going forward.
Yeah, and I looked it up, and the Broncos against the Chiefs, they had, not counting the final drive where they knelt it out, they had 7 drives. 5 of them they ended up scoring on, which is great. One was an interception, only punted once. The interception, I'm not gonna rip Bo Nix for that. That was just a great play by 2 Kansas City defenders. Nick Bolton made a great play to secure the interception, and the other defensive back, he made a great play to break up the pass. I'm not gonna rip Bo Nix for that one.
Yeah.
But the issue here is, if you're gonna play this dink and dunk ball control game, where you're gonna have multiple drives that are eating up almost 10 minutes of the clock, well, you got to end those drives by getting into the end zone, right? You had 3 drives where they walked out with a field goal. They got into the end zone, into the red zone, and walked out with the field goal. I mean, the very first drive of the game, 14 plays, 8 minutes, field goal. Only move the ball 56 yards. Then you have another one, 16 plays, 79 yards, another 8-minute drive, field goal. So, 2 drives per field goals, 2 punts. So 2 drives where you have 30 plays and 16 minutes of clock eaten up. You got to end those drives in the end zone, especially against teams like the Jaguars, and other, the Houston Texans and other teams that are going to be in the playoffs. You got that's the biggest complaint I have with the offense, and it's kind of become an issue over the last few weeks, getting into the end zone and being unable to punch it in, getting that last little bit in to get it in there. Had some of those issues pop up against the Jaguars as well. Hopefully that is something they're taking this mini bye week and looking at as that next step. Another part of it, and just to glance over this, last 2 games, Bo Nix has regressed a little bit with his play. The footwork and panicking in the pocket has been a little bit of an issue, and been a little bit more of a problem. He's just got to get back to being settled down. He's still making some great plays. still making some great throws, still making some great reads, but there have been opportunities that have been missed because of some of those issues. But overall, I was pleased with this offensive performance against the Chiefs on a short week. Still some issues that can be cleaned up, but what I saw Thursday night and what I was able to watch looked a lot worse than when I was able to go back and watch the full game over, focus in on it, and when I was going through and doing my grading, all of the 6 offensive linemen played really good football. There were some issues in the run game, but those were there were multiple missed blocks by Adam Prentice, and it was a bit of a issue with him. Adam Troutman had a couple bad blocks, and then the offensive linemen, none of them were perfect. Each one of them had a bad block here or there. Hat tip to Alex Forsyth, came in with I think 1 practice in his belt, getting ready for the game, couple walkthroughs, and he played outstanding starting in this one. Ben Powers, he ended up playing more than Alex Palczewski. He played really good football. And man, I got to rant about this real quick. The false start that they called on him, there is no movement from the dude. That was such a terrible call. The defensive pass interference call on Patrick Surtain, they are allowed to use their body and the sideline the way that he did. They are allowed to do that. I was watching Chris Harris talk about this, and there is one brief moment where he slightly kind of grabs the arm, but the receiver also grabs his arm. He's like, so maybe the ref threw it on that, but the flag came out like a good second later, so I don't think that's what it was. The ref isn't even grabbing the flag until he's guiding the receiver out of bounds. Corners are allowed to do that. Absolutely hate that call. Just want to get that out there because I know a lot of people don't like the fact that with how I am about penalties, but that was absolutely bogus one that they had, and I've seen a lot of Chiefs fans complaining about the offside penalty or encroachment, whatever it was on Chris Jones. Well, Chris Jones got into the neutral zone and Quinn Miners reacted before he was able to get back. That's a penalty. But yeah, those 2 penalties were absolutely bogus on Denver. There is absolutely no movement from Ben Powers, and Patrick Surtain was allowed to do what he did.
Yeah, well, Chiefs fans are going to cry because that's what happens when you've been spoiled the past many years now, and you're missing the playoffs and coming after Andy Reid and whatnot. But yeah, that the false start was bogus. That it feels like it was a ref precogged it and just being like, yeah, I'm just going to throw a flag on the Broncos there. That's just what it felt like in terms of, like you said, there was no movement from the Broncos side, and they were just like, it's on them. And I don't know if it's a reputation thing. Obviously, Sean Payton's got some history with referees and whatnot, but the one on PS2 is especially just aggravating because we've seen that play a million times from DBs. And to throw it in that situation, I mean, if Riley Moss did it, I mean, they already have nothing against him. He gets a little grabby here and there, and I get it. But I have expected it to be on him, but that is something that's just not going to change, to be honest. Like this season, the Broncos have been a little sloppy, and there's been a little bit of a bias. That's just how this season is, and they're going to have to work through it like they have, getting to the record that they have now.
Yeah, it's Sean Payton teams are typically a little bit more on the penalized side of things. And then in terms of the defensive penalties, with how aggressive they are with the rate of man coverage, there's going to be penalties thrown against them. With how explosive and what's the right terminology here, and how adept Nick Benito and Jonathan Cooper are at guessing the snap count, you're going to get penalties. You're going to get offsides on those 2 because they're going to be off every now and then. You're going to get some holding and defensive pass interference ones on the coverage guys. But man, it is some of them. It's my biggest issue when it comes to the penalties has been the pre-snap penalties on offense. Those are ones that you really got to get figured out, and then the timing of some of those penalties and the not being necessary. And this is one thing that I know a lot of fans have issues with, but sometimes there are coaches that are like, in certain circumstances, take the penalty, right? If you are going to get beat deep, take the defensive pass interference instead of giving up the touchdown. If your quarterback is going to get hit and get blindsided, take the hold on the offensive line. Players are taught there are instances where it's best to take the penalty to protect yourself, protect the teammate, protect the team. And Denver has had some of those. But you've also had those like, that is unnecessary. There's been a couple against Talanoa Hufanga. That's like, why? Like, the tripping one against the Chargers in the first game, that's the one that comes to mind the most when I talk about that. It's so unnecessary. And then you also get some of the bad calls or some of the stupid rules that, yeah, it's a penalty, but it's still stupid. You know, the body weight on the quarterback. I will always rant and rave about that being against the rules. I think that's the stupidest penalty. It's not even for injuries for it. Quarterbacks are actually dealing with more injuries since they implemented that rule. And so are pass rushers. They're starting to deal with more arm and wrist injuries because they're trying to abide by the rule. They talk about player safety and they have this rule that's leading to more injuries. But hey, that's neither here nor there. Moving on. Overall, it was a good showing offensively. Defense, they have a lot that they need to work on. Game wasn't as close as the score looks because, you know, the interception and then a big return on the special teams unit, that put them up in pretty good position. But the issue I have with this is, again, one sack against a 4th and 5th string offensive tackle in this game. And they got some good pressure, but they weren't able to get home. Lane discipline against better quarterbacks, against better tackles, that's not good enough. That's one of the biggest issues I have in this one. But we're going to move on. We're going to be talking about the AFC top seed. Obviously, if Denver wins, that's it. They get the top seed. But if they lose, I think they could. If they lose, there is a good chance they are the 3rd seed in the AFC. Because the Jaguars can still overtake them and the Patriots can still overtake them. So they got to obviously just win. That's the easiest thing for it. And then there's been some questions about it is, will the Chargers rest their starters? I'll believe it when I see it just because of how competitive Harbaugh is. But I think they should. I think that it makes sense for them to rest their starters. I think seeding for them isn't that big of a deal. No matter what, you're the 5th or 6th seed, maybe or the 6th or 7th seed. I can't remember exactly what it is. So if you lose, you can actually get a better matchup than you can if you end up as the 5th or 6th seed. I would want to be the 7th seed personally. Because I would rather go, if I'm the Chargers, I would rather want to go into New England and even going into Denver and in 2 and 3 weeks time than having to go into Jacksonville or going into Pittsburgh or Baltimore, whoever ends up winning that division, because of how a lot of people in the NFL view those teams. The Chargers or the Patriots, they haven't faced the toughest of defenses, and they definitely haven't faced a defense that can be as confusing to read as the Chargers defense. Even in Foxborough, I would rather that matchup than Trevor Lawrence. You know, going into Jacksonville, having to take on Trevor Lawrence, and who is really coming along with the scheme or within the scheme and all that, and Liam Cohen's play calling. I'd rather go that route. And instead of going into Jacksonville, instead of going into Pittsburgh or Baltimore. So if I were them, I would rest their starters. With the beating that Justin Herbert has taken, I would do what I can to protect him. With how beat up they are on the offensive line, I would do what I can to protect those offensive linemen. Just all around, they are a very beat up team. And at this point, every team is beat up. But they are missing a lot of key players. There are a lot of key players that are hurt. Anytime Justin Herbert, with the quality of that offensive line and the beating he took from the Houston Texans, I would rest them. That is the route I would go. Yeah, it's helping Denver. And this is why I have a hard time seeing it happen. They have a chance to play spoiler. They have a chance to make sure that the road to the Super Bowl doesn't go through Denver. They have a chance to go in there and do what they can to make sure they don't get the top seed. But sometimes you got to look inward and see that it might be best for them to rest their starters.
Yes, and this isn't just a oh, we're Broncos fans and we want an easy path to the first seed, right? It just makes sense for the Chargers to do that. But on the other hand, you mentioned Harbaugh is an ultra competitive, hard-headed head coach. And if he can play spoiler to a division rival, I think he's going to take that chance. There's a very good chance that they are playing their starters. Maybe this is a smokescreen that they're going to rest them, although it'd probably be better. Like you mentioned, Justin Herbert got battered by Houston's defense, and to come back and play Denver the next week with, obviously, we've kind of talked about already, the defense has been a little down in terms of actually taking the quarterback down. You could see that go up again against the Chargers because they're playing backup tackles as well. And honestly, if you're going to get to the playoffs, because the Chargers are in no matter what, maybe it is better to rest your starters and not go so battered into the playoffs where, hey, if you get beat up too much, you're probably losing that first game anyway. So for the Broncos, it would be fantastic. I don't want necessarily an easy road, but man, I could definitely see the Chargers resting their starters and giving the Broncos that first seed and honestly making the playoffs run through Denver. That's what they need.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Herbert got pressured 29 times, took 6-ish sacks. Looking at Pro Football Focus, and they don't do half sacks, so it could only be 5.5 or whatever. It's a weird one. But they have him at 6 sacks and 29 total pressures, an extra few hits. That's taken a beating. It was one of those games that was tough. I'm pulling up another one here where, the Houston Texans, this was one of the games with the most pressures on a quarterback in the season. It was like, out of every single game, it was like top 30, which is a lot with how many games there are. So again, it might be best for them to rest their starters, and yeah, it makes the road easier for Denver. But again, sometimes you got to look inwardly. You got to look at what's best for your team in that. But again, Harbaugh, ultra competitive. I have a hard time seeing him do it. I think that, again, not only would he love to play spoiler, he would love to recapture some momentum, not go into the playoffs in back-to-back losses, even if they do rest their starters. Capture some of that momentum going forward, go into the game in the first playoff game and try to carry over that momentum to that point. But it's tough. We'll see. Vegas very clearly does not expect them to play the starters or play the starters for the whole game. That's another option in this. They can play their starters for the first half and then make the switch at the second half. That's always a possibility there, but it might be best for them with playoff spot clinched up. Seeding very well could be decided pretty much before going into this game, because who they're also fighting with. Obviously, you have the Houston Texans and Indianapolis Colts. Colts are eliminated, but Houston Texans, they're still vying for seeding. That is one of the early games. Then you also have the Buffalo Bills and New York Jets game, which is going on at the same time. So depending on what the Texans do, that can change what they end up doing. So we may not have an answer until game time for this one and with what they want to do. But yeah, I think it would be best that either way, Denver does get a little bit of some help in this one with Denzel Perryman. He's been suspended for 2 games. The first game was the Houston Texans one. Second one will be this Broncos season finale game. And he has been a key cog in that defense, especially against Denver over the past few years when he's been there. But Derwin James is still a threat. And then their pass rush, though, has been practically non-existent all season long. Even after they got Odafe Owe from the Baltimore Ravens for Alohi Gilman, they've had some issues with that. But it's tough. I know on the defensive line, Tier Tart and Jamari Caldwell, they've been playing really good football. But they're not best at getting after the quarterback, which can help the Broncos. But yeah, I mean, if the Broncos want the top seed, it all starts by just win. That's how it's been for the last few weeks. And it's unfortunate they dropped that game to the Jacksonville Jaguars because it opened the door for the Jaguars to take the top seed, which is still alive. And it made it where Denver couldn't clinch really until the end of the season game. Because let's face it, it was unlikely that the New England Patriots would lose to the New York Jets. It was unlikely with the way that they were trending. The Jacksonville Jaguars would lose to the Indianapolis Colts. Neither of those games went the way that they needed to. The only one that did was the Philadelphia Eagles beating the Buffalo Bills. That eliminated them from top seed contention. But it's still Jacksonville. It's still New England that are the threats, and only one of those games will be decided by the time Denver takes the field.
Yeah, and out of the teams in the playoffs right now, Jacksonville is the one that scares me the most. Not just because they beat us, but man, they just look complete right now. Trevor Lawrence looks awesome. I wasn't expecting it because it kind of came late in the season, but they've been a sleeper team. No one's really been paying attention to them just because of kind of how they have been playing this season, and that'd be a tough matchup. Buffalo as well. I don't know, just something about Josh Allen, man. Like, you can never count him out of a game. As horrendous as their defense has been, which, hey, Sean McDermott, time's ticking, defensive head coach. Your defense has been trash for years. But man, there's those two matchups would be pretty rough. Not saying I think the Broncos would lose, but those are definitely the matchups I'm most concerned about in terms of the Broncos personnel and how they've been playing.
Yeah, I find this year for the playoffs to be extremely interesting because you have 6 of the 7 spots all clinched up. Seeding obviously changes. But all that's left is who's going to win the final division. Is it going to be the Steelers and the Ravens in the AFC, Panthers or the Buccaneers in the NFC? Like, it is the fact that we could walk in, have a 8-9 team in the playoffs this year. Oh man, it's so annoying. I absolutely hate stuff like that. But I also think that it shouldn't be purely record. Division winners should be rewarded for that. But it just goes to show how bad the NFC South is. But I mean, in the AFC, you're going to have a team that is 9-8 or 10-7 make the playoffs, and with the Steelers and the Ravens. But man, it's a weird year. I can't. Maybe it's happened recently. I honestly don't remember where it's a point where all the 3 wild card spots and 3 of the division winners have been, decided, but one division winner is left going into the final season of it. Normally, we have all the division titles clinched, and one team still or 2 teams still competing for the wild card spot. But there is still a lot left on the line for Denver. And one thing too is with the playoffs and with having it clinched up that Denver doesn't have going for them is playoff seeding, or not playoff seeding, draft picks order. So like, this is the thing where, sometimes it can be nice to face a team that might be wanting to play for an earlier pick, might be wanting to tank a little bit in that final game of the season. I think it would have been amazing if Denver had to play, like the Raiders in the final game of the season, who ended up winning the number 1 pick bowl?
The Raiders.
The Raiders did?
Got blown out.
So yeah, I mean, the Raiders, they're going to be pushing for that number 1 seed. I would have absolutely loved to play them in the season finale, and the Chargers are tough. I know that there's a lot of jokes about them because they can't stay healthy, and the Chargers always charger. So if the Chargers do play their starters, hopefully they charger this one away. But they are a good team. They're a scary team because of what they're doing defensively. Minter is doing an absolutely phenomenal job with what he has, and he rightfully deserves to be a head coach. But Vance Joseph, he's got to figure it out. The fact that Denver's defense, since he has come back, and even before then, even when he was the head coach in Denver, even his time in Arizona, the defenses in December always struggle more than compared to the rest of the season. It is a trend with him, and it points to that he just struggles to make adjustments late in the season after opposing offenses start to figure out what he's doing. He's got to figure something out to get this defense back on track, because the offense has carried them far over those last few weeks since that mini bye week. But they need that defense to really come up big if they want to make a run at the Super Bowl. They're not going to be able to get away with it with how they've been playing over the past few weeks, and that was made clear by the Jaguars, who they absolutely exploited the tackling issues. They exploited the tendency of penalties. They exploited the communication errors. Everything that's wrong with this defense, the Jaguars exploited. So I wrote about this after the game on Friday, and I was talking about how the offense found their groove after that mini bye week. Hopefully, this Monday bye week we get much of the same, but for the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Vance Joseph's not just pushing for a Super Bowl, and he's pushing for a head coaching job. And, we brought it up earlier in the show, like, dude, this is a trend. Your defenses are falling off in December. That's not good, especially for playoff teams. And the talent, it's not like when he was in Arizona and he was lacking talent. Like, this is a loaded defense with very talented players, and you're still falling off. Obviously, the tackling issues, not all on him, right? Like, but he's the guy who's got to enforce that because it's been very undisciplined as of the last several weeks. And you cannot slip against the Bills, against the Jaguars. We already saw what the Jaguars do to a defense that's been regressing. But, no matter the matchup, I don't care who it is. You can't be making the same mistakes you're doing. Penalties. But tackling's obviously the biggest one. I mean, there's no excuse for it at this level, especially with how they played earlier in the season. It's just inexcusable, especially from the talent that they have. Hufanga, we brought him over. He played the season for the majority, has played very well, but the last couple of weeks, missing tackles, missing assignments, linebacker play has been dreadful across the board. And again, no one's getting home to get sacks consistently. We can't have a one-man show. It's similar to how we had wide receivers most of this season. It's like, okay, we can't just have one guy show up every week and save the game. That's just not sustainable. And we've been saying that all season as well. It's not sustainable. And here they are probably locking up the first seed. But the playoffs are a different beast. Once you're in, anything can happen. And that goes for every single team.
Yeah, and we have Coach Chris coming in with the $20 bid. Thank you, Coach Chris. We appreciate that. It says, great show. Love the analytical breakdown. Let's keep the passion going and take care of the Chargers. 100%. And we can talk about what how other teams can help them. And, this is one thing. Every week when it gets around playoff time, if the Broncos are in the hunt, I always write up a rooting interest. And it was funny this year as I wrote up the rooting interest and I would go and check Facebook and all the comments were, doesn't matter. Broncos just need to win. That's true. And it still is true. But if the Broncos can't win, here's how these things can still happen. But all it comes down to is they just got to win. As much as I couldn't stand the guy. I absolutely loved his one major thing of philosophy when it comes to football, I guess. Just win, baby. Al Davis there. Just win. That's all Denver's got to do. Just win. Go take care of the Chargers. Get the job done. Win the top seed in the AFC. Make the road to the AFC to the Super Bowl. Go through Denver. Because with what Denver has done since last October, one loss since October 2024 at home, with how the crowd has been getting into it, I can't even imagine the atmosphere in Denver when they host a playoff game. Because no matter what, it's going to happen, whether they end up as the first, second, or third seed. They're going to host playoff. I can't even imagine the atmosphere there. So just make the road go through Denver. Have that atmosphere every single game, making it more difficult for other opponents, and just hope that Denver's defense shows up and they can tackle more consistently for that. But we also have Formula Salty Thunder saying, I feel like the defense has to get back to blitzing more like early in the season. We have talent on defense. Denver had two of their highest blitzing rates in the season in two of the last three games. Obviously they hadn't blitzed so much from week 10 through 14. They didn't blitz a whole lot. But they didn't blitz a whole lot against, Chris Oludekun or whatever his name is. I guess last week because it wasn't necessary. But they blitzed 41.9% of the time, which is the third highest against the Jaguars, 37% of the time against the Packers, which was their fourth highest. The only times they blitzed more was against the Indianapolis Colts, which proved foolish because of how Daniel Jones was playing against the blitz at that time, and the New York Giants, which made sense, 43.2% of the time. So that 68.4 against the Colts is such an outlier with it. About 30 to 40% seems pretty typical. I think that I don't think they need to blitz more. I think they just got to be more calculated with it. I've talked about this before. The double A mug looks from the linebackers. It's great, but it's kind of lost their teeth a little bit, and it still can be effective. But Vance Joseph just has to add more of a twist off of it. One of those things being a pirate stunt. We did that against the Jaguars. Alex Singleton looped around, and I believe sacked Trevor Lawrence. So I'd like to see a little bit more pirate stunts thrown off of it. I would love to see a pirate Texas stunt combination thrown off of it. Especially when you have a player like Zach Allen who can be that clear out guy and just create all sorts of confusion for it. Texas Pirate stunt is the linebackers in the A gap and they loop around and go out the C gap off the whichever tackles outside shoulder. Pirate stunt is you have your edge who loops inside into the A gap or into the A gap on whatever side they are. If it's Nick Bonito, then it's going to be that between that left guard and the center. Cooper is going to be that. And then you have that defensive lineman clear out. So you have, I wish I could draw it up because I absolutely love this. The Houston Texans did it against the Chargers once or twice, and it was really effective. I love the combination of Pirate Texas stunts just with how effective they are. Basically, I think that instead of not necessarily blitzing more, when Vance Joseph blitzes, he's got to start being more creative with it. Hopefully it's a thing of that they're being a little bit stagnant there for a while and trying to hide stuff. I had another comment earlier that talked about something similar with the offense, that the play calling was a little bit vanilla to try to, hide things. And hopefully we start breaking out a little bit more. That very well could be the case. I hope it is, especially with this defense.
Exactly. And, you mentioned the blitz rates and we talked about that. And yeah, you got to be more calculated. You got to be more creative and you got to get home if you're one of the defenders. Because we've seen, a fair amount of blitzing, like you mentioned, but you got to get home and take down the quarterback. Obviously, you want to push him off his spot and whatnot, but at the end of the day, these guys are getting paid, especially the edge rushers, to get home. The linebackers got to do their job as well, getting blitzes. I know McMillan usually gets home on his blitzes. Now, he's a little smaller. He doesn't always take down the quarterback, but he at least gets a good hit on him. And that's what we need to get back to. If you're not going to sack the quarterback on a blitz, you need to at least start getting some hits on him and make him think about it, especially Justin Herbert, who's been banged up this season, who's got his left hand all taped up. Nothing dirty, guys, but you do need to hit the quarterback and remind him that he's playing a pretty scary defense and he needs to watch his back or else he's getting sacked and that ball's coming out.
Yeah, and one thing, though, is after seeing Malcolm Roach call for the bodyweight penalty, not to rant about it even more, part of the reason why I hate that penalty is because it really messes with the minds of pass rushers. It makes them have to change things up with how they play, and it can lead to more missed opportunities for sacks. Teams, the pass rusher may want to pull up because they don't want to get that, and it makes it so they're not bringing as much force into the hit, and the quarterback's able to break away. So that I absolutely hate that penalty, and it just has such a domino effect for other things, more injuries for pass rushers, and it's a league that already does so much to protect offense. That is a penalty that is going overboard, I think, especially with how little there is to protect defenders, and especially with what they're doing. And another thing with that is it'd be nice to see Sean Payton really try to hammer away with some of these missed holds that are going against Nick Bonito. Man, there was one against the Chiefs that was absolutely terrible where the guy as a pool had Bonito in a bear hug, which is absolutely disgusting. There was another one where, what movie is it? I can't think of the name, but there's a movie that comes to mind where they push the guy's head down and they pull his underwear, the back of his jersey up over the helmet.
Oh, it'll come to me.
But there's a movie where they do that. I want to say it's a hockey movie where they actually do that. But I can't remember exactly. And basically I think it was against the Jaguars, where the right tackle basically did that to Jonathan Cooper and no call on that. So I'd like to see a little bit more on that. But that is going to do it for us today. Obviously, it's early morning. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Monday morning. Hope you guys had a wonderful holiday, but we do have another holiday coming up. And with that, just a reminder, please, again, reach out to friends, reach out to family, make sure they're doing okay during the holidays. It is always a tough time mentally for a lot of people. It is a time where people really start to feel alone. And with the way the weather's been, and it's been awful throughout the whole country. And I don't know how it's been for other countries. So if you're tuning in from another country, hope you guys are having good weather. Here in the States, we are not. It's been absolutely crazy with the wind and the cold here, which led to internet issues that I had. But internet being down for literally 48 hours. Oh, that was a nightmare, man. But just make sure you guys are checking in on friends and family, seeing if they're okay and all that. But before we get out of here, there are some final things we got to get through. So, of course, if you guys are able to do so, Super Chats and YouTube stars on Facebook, they help support the shows. They help us keep the lights on. They are dedicated to us on that. And of course, if you guys are able to do so as well, if you aren't able to help out financially, you guys can do so in a matter of seconds. Subscribe, like, and share. Helps us fight the algorithms that are ever changing on Facebook, ever changing on YouTube, ever changing even on Google, that are being headaches for us constantly. You guys can also take some time to go over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review for a chance to win some gear. Not swag. I hate saying swag every single month. You guys can also follow us on Instagram at Mile High Huddle with an underscore between Mile and High and Huddle. And if you guys are able to do so, holidays are over, but birthdays are still a thing, and these can make great presents. You guys can go to mhhmerch.com to get your gear on. You guys can get hats like the ones we have, mugs, shirts, all sorts of stuff. You guys can get some gear from there. You guys can also follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/MileHighHuddlePod, facebook.com/MileHighHuddle, where you guys can get access to the wonderful Facebook community that we've built up over the last 10, 11, 12 years, however long it's been. I could never remember it. I just need to write it down. MHH started this year, so I can know for sure. But you guys can also follow us on Twitter or X, whatever it is you want to call it, at MileHighHuddle, at the MHH Pod, at BFB Pod, BFB_pod.
Underscore, I believe.
I can never remember again. D2, the Mighty Ducks Hockey Kids movie. Yep. Thank you, Michael. As soon as you said it, that it clicked on that. But you can also follow us on Twitter at Erick Trickel for myself, at Dylan Von Arks MHH for Dylan here. It's been a wonderful morning show. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I hope you guys, this time next week, we're talking about the Broncos being the top seed in the AFC, and we don't have to get ready for a game. We get that break, even though we'll still have plenty to talk about. I will be back on Friday morning, barring any more internet issues, and then Friday night again, barring any more internet issues. It was kind of funny because the technician who came out to fix our internet showed up 5 minutes before the podcast started on Friday night, and he's like, "Oh, it should only be like a 5-minute fix." 2 hours later, we finally got our internet fixed. But so thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you guys have a wonderful time. Hope you guys had a wonderful holiday again. Hope you guys stay safe. Don't drink and drive, especially with the next holiday that's coming up. Hope you guys have a wonderful New Year's. Hope you guys have a wonderful time ringing in the new year with friends, family, whatever it is. Thank you guys for tuning in again. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Thank you guys and so much. Make sure you guys choose kindness, compassion. Don't drink and drive. And of course, go Broncos.